the most unapologetic star the NBA had ever seen. Cornrows, tattoos, a 6-foot assassin who dared to be himself. Allen Iverson didn't just play the game, he changed it. But behind the swagger was chaos. He earned over $200 million and watched it vanish. Gone to lawsuits, gone to divorce, gone to friends who never paid him back. Until one day, in court, he said the words no one expected. "I don't even have money for a cheeseburger." But hidden inside an old sneaker deal, one line of fine print would save his future. A $32 million trust, waiting silently until the moment he needed it most. He didn't just sign a shoe deal, he signed a lifeline. Chapter 1. The icon who refused to conform. Allen Iverson was a walking contradiction. Too small to dominate, too raw to be marketable, too real to play the game the league wanted. He grew up in Hampton, Virginia, where dinner meant choosing between electricity and groceries. Allen would lie on the living room floor, using his basketball as a pillow, listening to his mom count coins at the kitchen table. Outside, sirens wailed. Inside, the lights flickered off again. His mom worked 3 jobs. The lights still went out. By 15, he was already the best football and basketball player in the state. By 17, he was in jail, charged for a bowling alley brawl that nearly stole his future. He thought it was over, but Georgetown's coach saw something others missed. Not just talent, but hunger. And that hunger would soon make the entire league take notice. And Allen made sure the world knew who he was. He hit the league like a live wire. No filter, no script, no apologies. Braids, tats, chains. The swagger of a 6-foot assassin. He crossed up Jordan in his rookie year and didn't blink. Iverson wasn't just playing the game, he was rewriting it. And while Nike wanted another Jordan, someone clean, someone safe, Reebok looked at Iverson and saw the future. They offered him a deal before his rookie season ended. A signature line, a lifetime contract, and buried deep in the legal language, a clause almost no one talked about, a $32 million trust. Locked away until he turned 55. Iverson barely noticed it. He didn't care. Back then, he was making millions, living fast, feeding his people. He wasn't planning for 55. He didn't need a safety net. At least, not yet. Because in those first few years, Allen Iverson looked untouchable. And that's exactly when everything started to fall apart. Chapter 2. $200 million gone. At his peak, Allen Iverson wasn't just rich. He was everywhere. Sneakers, billboards, rap lyrics. He had a $70 million contract with the Sixers, another $40 million from Reebok, and tens of millions more from appearances, jerseys, and deals that followed him like shadows. But Iverson didn't spend money. He detonated it. There were nights in Vegas where he'd walk into the Palms, drop $150,000 on blackjack in 2 hours, then hit the jewelry store downstairs and buy $80,000 worth of chains. For his friends. Money comes and goes, he'd say. But loyalty is forever. He once walked into a club, ordered every bottle on the top shelf, and tipped the staff 10 grand before ordering food. And it wasn't just about him. He flew his entourage first class, kept them in luxury suites, paid their bills, their rent, even their child support. He said, "If I got it, we got it." And he meant it. His mom would call him, worried. "Allen, baby, you can't save everybody." But Iverson had grown up watching her work 3 jobs just to keep the lights on. Now that he could flip the switch for everyone he loved, how could he stop? "Mama," he'd say, "I got enough for all of us now." But nobody told him about taxes. Nobody explained compound interest, or how hangers-on rarely pay you back, and Iverson didn't ask. Then the walls started closing in. A bitter divorce froze half his assets. The court ordered him to pay $3.9 million in jewelry debts. He claimed he never even saw the invoice. Lawsuits piled up. One so-called friend took out loans in his name. Another quietly sold off his watches and chains. He'd made $200 million. And suddenly, he couldn't even access his bank account. In 2012, standing in a Georgia courtroom, the judge asked if he could cover his debts. Iverson lifted his hands and said, I don't even have money for a cheeseburger. That moment went viral. Sports talk shows had a field day. Fans asked, how does that happen? How does a man who once inspired an entire generation end up broke? The answer seemed obvious. Bad decisions, worse friends, and zero financial planning. But the real story was more complicated. Allen Iverson wasn't completely broke. Because back in 2001, buried in that Reebok deal, was something even he had forgotten about. Something that would outlive the fame, the contracts, and the chaos. A clause that was quietly ticking like a time bomb, and it was about to save his life. Chapter 3. The $32 million time bomb. While Iverson's life was unraveling in public, a secret safety net was sitting quietly in the background, untouched, unnoticed, and unclaimed. And it all went back to a deal he signed in 2001. Reebok knew they weren't just sponsoring an athlete, they were hitching their brand to a cultural force. Iverson wasn't clean, he wasn't polished, but he moved markets. So they built something no other brand had done before. A lifetime deal structured not just to reward him, but to protect him. The flashy part was obvious, a signature shoe line, national campaigns, annual payments for life. But hidden in the back pages of the contract was the real twist. When Allen Iverson turns 55, he gets a $32 million trust fund. Not a bonus, not an option, a locked box, sealed away for decades, out of reach. Iverson didn't think twice about it. He barely read the fine print. Back then, 55 felt like another planet. But Reebok knew better. They'd seen what money and fame do to young stars. They knew the entourage would grow. They knew the risks. So they built in a delay, a second chance parachute, time for the moment he might need it most. Iverson couldn't borrow against it, couldn't cash it early. It wasn't tied to performance stats or popularity. It was his, but only when the time was right. And in the years that followed, as the headlines got uglier, that $32 million trust just sat there, growing, waiting. It was the clause no one talked about, until it became the only thing left. Before we dive into the next part, here's something that could seriously level up the way you invest. If you're looking for professional grade insight, not social media hype, you need to check out Seeking Alpha. Their Alpha Pick service gives you 2 hand-picked stocks every month with a proven history of strongly outperforming the market. These aren't random tips, they're backed by data-driven analysis and real performance. Want proof? Click the link in the description to see the track record for yourself. While you're there, you can also unlock a free trial and special discount on Seeking Alpha Premium, giving you full access to expert articles, quant ratings, and serious investor tools. Both offers are exclusive to this channel and available for a limited time. Click the link now to get started, and let's get back to the story. Chapter 4. Reebok's Long Game. By the time the headlines turned against him, most brands would have run. Iverson wasn't an MVP anymore. He wasn't bringing in record sales, and the media had already moved on. But Reebok didn't. They kept cutting the checks, kept putting his shoes in stores, kept believing he mattered. And that trust fund, they didn't bury it. They protected it. Not because it was profitable, but because someone inside the company still believed in who Allen Iverson was, or who he might still become. No one knows exactly who insisted on the clause. Maybe it was his agent. Maybe it was a Reebok exec who'd seen too many stars burn out too fast. But someone said, let's make sure he's okay, even if he loses everything. And that's exactly what they did. They locked away $32 million, far enough into the future that Iverson couldn't touch it. Safe from lawsuits, safe from spending, safe even from himself. It was the most thoughtful clause in sneaker history. A financial parachute for a man the world saw as reckless. And then Reebok changed hands. In 2005, Adidas acquired Reebok for nearly $4 billion. New ownership, new leadership, new priorities. Legally, Adidas couldn't just erase Iverson's contract. It was binding, part of the assets they bought. But morally, they didn't have to keep him close. They could have distanced the brand, let the deal fade quietly. Instead, they leaned in. They honored every dollar. They kept the annual $800,000 rolling. They didn't just accept the deal, they embraced it. Because even if the league had moved on, Even if the world saw him as a cautionary tale, Adidas understood what Reebok had always known. Allen Iverson wasn't just a contract, he was a symbol, and his story wasn't over. Chapter 5. What we can learn from Iverson. Allen Iverson turns 55 on June 7th, 2030, and when that day comes, $32 million will hit his account. No lawyers, no loopholes, just a trust unlocking like a time capsule signed decades ago by a younger version of himself who thought he'd never need it. But here's the twist. He's not waiting around broke. Despite everything, despite the lawsuits, the frozen accounts, the rumors of bankruptcy, Iverson never hit rock bottom the way people imagine. Because Reebok still pays him $800,000 a year, every year, like clockwork. It's not NBA money, but it's enough if you've learned how to live differently. These days, Iverson keeps a lower profile. He does meet and greets, signs autographs, shows up for the Sixers when it counts, and more importantly, he talks about it, the mistakes, the regrets, the weight of not knowing how to say no. I was trying to take care of everybody. I just didn't take care of me. And that's what makes the trust fund so powerful. It's not just a financial decision. It's a symbol of everything he had to survive to get there. Most players don't get a second chance. He's getting one in writing. Because years ago, when he was still untouchable, someone had the foresight to ask a simple question. What if he needs saving later? That question became a clause. That clause became a promise. And that promise might be the reason Allen Iverson ends his story with peace, not pain. He lost $200 million, lost friends, lost his place in the league, but he never lost everything because one company saw him and never stopped seeing him. This is the Max deal, where money, power, and basketball collide. Subscribe for more stories of contracts that built empires and the ones that saved lives. Allen Iverson lost $200 million, but one clause buried in his shoe deal gave him a second chance. But what happens when there's no second chance? Next time, we follow the player who dared to challenge a superpower and vanished without a word. Enes Kanter didn't retire. He didn't get injured. He spoke out against China, and the NBA made him disappear. A $100 billion empire, a ruthless regime, one man caught in the crossfire. This is the story they don't want told, and the league hopes you'll never ask why. Subscribe so you don't miss the player who was erased.